Nordschleife, 12.93 miles, 154 turns. The Green Hell is infamous for being host to titanic manufacturer battles for the fastest, most capable cars in their respective categories. Fastest front-wheel drive hot hatch, fastest SUV, fastest sports car, fastest hypercar, and the one most coveted of them all, fastest production car. Two unlikely manufacturers specifically came to battle, Porsche and Lamborghini. Porsche owning the track record with a stunning 918 hybrid Weissach pack, clocking an ethereal sub 7 minute lap time of 6 minutes and 57 seconds, shattering the previous record by a gargantuan 14 seconds. That, however, was 2013. By October 2016, Lamborghini, with Marco Mappelli at the wheel, stunned the world and set a new production lap record. 6 minutes 52.01, 5 seconds faster than the £1 million Porsche hypercar. The evidence video was so fast, in fact, that some believed that this was Lamborghini up to its old tricks again, that the footage was sped up. But the truth is, the time that was set, Lamborghini actually delivered that, and the gauntlet was well and truly thrown down. Now, in true Porsche style, not one to sit on their laurels, the rebuttal came fast and blunt. The 911 GT2 RS, 6 minutes 47.03. They took those 5 seconds that they were beaten by back, and they matched them, and then they took another 5 seconds and they shoved them right up Lamborghini's. The truth is, however, that these cars are specifically tailored to and for the Nordschleife. So what happens when you run them head to head in other locations? What about all that stuff in between? These are road cars after all, so which is more fun, which is more exciting, which is more engaging? Well, this is head to head, so let's find out. At the start, I mentioned that it was a curious coming together to see Lamborghini contesting lap times with Porsche, and that's largely to do with the past showing of Lamborghinis. The Miura, exquisitely beautiful, but it wasn't remembered for its searing track performances. Likewise, the Lamborghini Countach, adored for its wild looks, awesome sounds, but now known for its distinctly awful driving characteristics, rubbish visibility, and a bunch of skullduggery around its performance claims. They were hardly putting a cow in a tracksuit, as Clarkson says, but it wasn't far off. Let's skip a few models, Diablos, Murcielagos, Gallardos, and we arrive at the age of the Aventador, and more specifically, the Huracan. Neck-snapping good looks once again, searing straight-line pace, fabulous sounds, but no awards won for its performances. The root of its issues coming from the newfangled magnetic suspensions never really hitting the mark. The word on the street was, to make it lose that understeering characteristic, you needed to configure it without the new suspension. So not the best start. So you can imagine the response when the Performante arrived. So, the Huracan Performante. Its 5.2 litre V10 is effectively the same as what's stored in the original Huracan. However, it's been fettled and cajoled for absolutely everything that it can give. Power is now up 30 brake horsepower to 630, torque equally improved to 440 pounds-foot, an additional 40 pounds. Add to this fully remapped suspension, retuned all-wheel drive system, reprogrammed magnetic dampers, 10% more stiffness, 15% on the anti-roll bars, forged carbon constructs at the front and the rear, and the results are quite simply astonishing. A quarter-mile time that matches the 1000 brake horsepower Bugatti Veyron 10.4 seconds, 0 to 60 2.6 seconds, faster than any car featured here on an episode of Driven, including that absolutely wild 720S. The thing is, 630 brake horsepower, 1584 kilograms and all-wheel drive do not constitute a car that can lap the Nordschleife in sub 7 minutes. Something else must have been going on here. And you'd be right to think it, because there was. You see, Lamborghini patented an entirely new active aero system. It's called ALA, Aerodynamica Lamborghini Attiva, a system that generates 750% more downforce than the regular Huracan. With all its valves closed, maximum downforce is achieved. Open, and there's a reduction in drag. Valves work at the rear to independently move and shut down and generate downforce on each side of the car, ultimately helping the car to turn. It's a best of both worlds. No compromise on downforce and no compromise on drag. The competition had been outflummoxed by not Ferrari or McLaren, but Lamborghini. Lamborghini of all the brands. Well, that was until this came along. Porsche have a reputation for making some of the finest road-going track cars that the industry has to offer. Fresh off their success with the GT3 range of products, that being GT3 and GT3 RS, Porsche turned their attention to what is known to be, and expected to be, the wild one, the Widowmaker. What you're looking at here is definitively the fastest Porsche 911 ever made. It's so fast that in the right conditions, even the almighty Porsche 918 Hybrid will struggle to live with it. And just consider, that's got the best part of 900 brake horsepower and all-wheel drive. The GT2 as a brand in itself comes with somewhat of an expectation to meet. It was launched on the 993 platform. It was known to be near on untamable, even more so as it extended into the 996 platform. Now, to appreciate what Porsche have created here, it will be good to understand the fundamental GT2 DNA, and it's actually quite straightforward. You take the most powerful production 911 in your current lineup, a 911 turbo, you keep the chassis fundamentals, omit the all-wheel drive for rear-wheel drive, thereby saving weight, and you go at lengths to remove even more weight with exotic materials like titanium and magnesium. You dial in an obscene amount of extra power, you strip out the aids, and you watch them go, literally off the order books and around the tracks collecting records. Power is derived from a 3.8 litre twin-turbo flat 6, similar to that of the Turbo S, but significantly reworked. It's mated to the illustrious PDK transmission that was shipped in the 918. Power is up to 691 brake horsepower, 553 pounds-foot of torque. With the engine rear mounted over the 325 section rears, it delivers scintillating straight line pace. 0 to 60, 2.8 seconds, and despite that significant aero, a top speed of 211 miles per hour. Weight savings, as you know, is part of the recipe, so the GT2 features a carbon roof, carbon anti-roll bars, and wheels that are forged from magnesium. All this positions the GT2 crucially 100 kilograms lighter than the Performante, albeit not super light at around 1400 kilograms. Now, lap times do not make up the car, so let's head to some roads that will allow these cars to be able to stretch their legs, let the power units roar, and force the tyres to scream. There's no better place than the Scottish Highlands to let a high capacity motor really unleash what it's got in store. This fictional ribbon of tarmac is deceptively technical, with moderate elevation changes. What's most noticeable in almost any car is the character of this road. In short, it's far from smooth. It's bumpy enough in fact to allow the cars to actually get air in more than one location of this circuit. The usual rules apply here. We'll try and stay on the left hand side of the track and get a taste of the character of each car. First up, the Performante. So, inside it was always going to be a special place to be, inside a Lambo. In VR certainly it isn't quite so different to the standard Huracan. There's smatterings of forged composite carbon fibre to remind you of precisely what you're sitting in, and whether that works for you is, I guess, a subjective matter of taste. I quite like the internal touches. The all-digital heads-up display are taken a leaf straight out of the Aventador SV's notebook, and it works really well here. I think the seats look really special. I'm reliably informed that as beautiful as they look, they are immensely hard backbreakers. In typical Lamborghini fashion, the view is pretty limited. It's quite a letterbox view, It's nowhere near as bad as a Lamborghini Aventador, but it does promote that kind of special sense of occasion when you're sat within this. Right, now on the move, it doesn't really feel radically quicker than a regular Huracan, which is never slow in the first place, but with only an extra 30 brake horsepower, I guess that's no real surprise. But as soon as you hit a turn, you get a very, very clear indication that a lot of change has happened here. What I found most surprising was the level of front end grip. It's just gargantuan. There's so much initial bite and turning, loads of precision. There's usually an emotion that comes along with these kind of cars, and I think in terms of steering, this Huracan has got to be said, it fills you with confidence with regards to its capabilities, what it's fundamentally going to let you do. Now soundtrack wise, this is faultless. A sonorous, howling V10 is an absolute delight to drive through. You don't even need to play with the gearbox to enjoy it. And when you do, the overrun is just fantastic. It really, really adds to the character of this car. Chassis is dynamic enough, certainly for an all-wheel drive drivetrain. Much like the steering, it's confidence inspiring as opposed to goading you into playfully oversteering with it, you know, like the 488. It can do it, but it doesn't want to do it. And with all of that downforce, well, why should it? Brakes are stellar, carbon ceramics all the way around on here. No point does it feel like it's running out of braking power. Now overall, this is really progressive. If you want to bring a supercar home at the end of a blast on the roads, this car feels like it's going to be the one that's going to accomplish that. You're going to bring this car back. What's going to be interesting is whether it delivers on the track, because here on the road it's really competent. But anyway, before that, we need to get a shot of that Porsche GT2 that's ahead. I think it's time for a switcheroo. Right, so much like all Porsches, the GT2 doesn't really deviate from the success formula too much. If you place yourself in any of the other GT range, you know, like GT3s, things are pretty familiar. 918 style carbon Alcantara wrapped steering wheel, sports chronometer, fabric door pulls, and in Visac pack spec you get these embroidered seats. Strangely, this particular car is spec'd with the roll cage delete, which is no cost option, but I guess technically that saves weight. But it's that red Alcantara lining that really denotes being sat in a GT2. And then there's the note. The gearbox is brilliant both up and down. One of the things that I wouldn't really get to experience here in VR is the shortened throw that you get on the pedals on this GT2. On the GT3 they're just a little bit longer, but on the GT2 Porsche literally changed the throw distance because the shift is so fast. With that 918 PDK box, the pedal response needed to be shorter. Who even notices that? That's typical Porsche. Chassis and suspension setup. This car is really focused. It doesn't actually feel like a road car at all. It feels like a race car. The GT3 RS already gave you that cup car feel, especially with its screaming race car engine, but it's got that feel in its chassis, but it's just got so much power. There's so much power. About that power, there's just no lag, really guttural sounds. It does sound quite similar to a 911 Turbo in real life, probably just a bit deeper, but here within AC, it's definitely the Turbo S sounds that have been sampled. It's a really audacious engine, and it's really the heart and soul of what this car actually is. It can only really be defined as a magnificent range topper for Porsche. Brakes are extremely powerful. Again, this stopping power doesn't feel like an exceptional road car brakes. It stops like a Cup Series race car, completely on a dime, bang. Transition from grip to slip is almost non-existent here. There's just so much grip that it feels like it's not ever going to break traction at the front or the rear. You push it a little bit too far and it will give you a drip of understeer, just to let you know that you're probably going beyond your limits as opposed to the car's limits. So the GT2 recipe has been changed, not from a DNA perspective, because the formula is very similar here still. So that's both the cars back to back on the road. The Porsche felt a lot more alive. It had quite a bit more punch to be able to match those brutal statistics that it's got, but it was the Performante that was just more sure-footed, giving you, certainly by road car standards, more confidence to be able to push harder for longer with less likelihood of ending up on the wrong side of the blacktop. Lamborghini have made a car that's thoroughly good to drive on the road, and that in itself, for Lamborghini, does require applause. Winner of round 1? Lamborghini Performante. It's time to boil this head-to-head down to brass tacks, find out which of these two road warriors performed best within their target designation on the track. And not any track will do. We need a concentrated test of every facet of the dynamic capability of these cars, a torture chamber for cars if you will. And for that, we have to head to Germany, but not quite where you naturally would think we're going to go. The location for this test is Bad Dreiberg. Welcome to BILSTER driving resort. 2.6 miles, 19 turns and a 26% track incline. All these attributes come together to deliver one of the most demanding circuits in Europe. This test and presentation course is actually a Hermann Tilke production, and it represents one of the most special highlights of European circuits. It's so undulating and demanding, it can actually be likened to like a baby Nordschleifer, not for its length of course, but certainly for its technicality. It's always good to have a baseline lap for these head-to-heads, so I enlisted the help of an impartial Ferrari, and I took their smoking hot 488 for a few laps to be able to get an idea of what sort of time to reach for. Its mid-engine rear-wheel drive setup is not replicated by either of these two cars, so neither car would have an upper hand when it comes to getting that driving feel around this track. Most importantly, it set a lap time of 1 minute 49 dead. So with a reference set, let's get started. Porsche, I think it's time to step forward. Now I mentioned before that the GT2 is a less of a widowmaker now, but it's still a tricky piggy as you can see here. The initial outlaps need to be 7-8 temps, a little bit pushy to be able to get that tyre temp built up for a good fast lap. Even on an outlap you can immediately feel that difference between a Focus track car and a supercar like the 488. Okay, let's focus, let's get that lap. in the road test, the GT2 felt like a race car. Out here on circuit, its agility is completely magnified. Immense grip, fantastic stability under braking, an enthralling, engaging experience overall. Most importantly, the GT2 crossed the line with a 1:44.47, stripping a clean 5 seconds straight off of that 488. The gauntlet has definitely been thrown down again. That's a monster lap time. Lamborghini, let's see what you've got in the bag. Again, equipped with these ultra high performance tyres, this car needs a strong outlap to be able to bring the rubber up to temperature and really get the car planted for the flying laps. There's such a gulf of performance between this track focused car and the 488 that we used in the base laps. This aero, you can feel it, it's fully at work, even here on this outlap. Right, okay, let's get the lap. Road car like as this Performante felt out in the Highlands, when it arrived at the track, it felt decidedly more track focused. Did it feel like driving a Super Trofeo Series Cup car? No. That immediacy wasn't present. It was sharp, but it's less direct. Only small hints of understeer were picked up early in the lap, and further into the lap, the further you went, the better it felt. Massively capable car. From the driver's seat, it really didn't feel like there was a great deal in it. And then we checked the lap time. The Huracan delivered a 1:46.2, 3 seconds faster than that benchmark, but completely eclipsed by the 911 GT2. So there we have it, a dominant win for the GT2 at the track, drawing these cars to 1 apiece between road and track. It would appear that Nordschleifer lap times don't lie when it comes to outright performance. So really, it leaves a subjective decision. Which car would you take home with you? What appeals to you aesthetically and sonically? And does all of that pale into oblivion relative to your personal brand loyalties? For me, I'd have to take the keys to the Porsche. Not because it was the faster car at the end of the test, but due to Porsche resonating with me at a brand level. Their rich racing heritage, that ethos of continual improvement of a single concept, it gets me every single time. However, if Lamborghini shipped a Huracan Performante that dropped the all-wheel drive for rear-wheel drive, saved more weight and improved the agility in turning, well, perhaps those brand loyalties might be tested.